let me be really clear. We're not taking away the ability for someone to speak to a live body. We're not replacing people with the technology. It's just another facet and another modality to get information out.
They keep telling us that it's all over for HR. The age of AI is upon us, and that means HR should be prepared to be decimated. We reject that message. The future of HR won't be handed to us. Instead, it'll be defined by those ready to experiment, adopt, and adapt. Future Proof HR invites these builders to share what they're trying, how it's going, what they've learned, and what's next. We are committed to arming HR with the AI insights to not just survive, but to thrive. Hello and welcome to the Future Proof HR podcast, where we explore how forward-thinking leaders in HR are preparing for disruption and redefining what it means to lead people in a changing world. I'm your host, Thomas Kunjappu, CEO of Cleary. Today's guest is Julie Fonzo, the Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Five Star Breaktime Solutions. With 15 plus years leading HR across startups, turnarounds, growth environments, and M&A, Julie treats HR as a business operator first. We're going to dig in to her mindset and relationship to AI, as well as her overall stance towards it as an HR leader. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Thomas. Happy to be here.
Well, happy to have you. Tell me about a little bit about your role at Five Star Breaktime at the moment.
Sure. So I have been with the company about 16 months. They brought me in really to learn the business from an operational perspective. So really getting my hands into the meat and the potatoes of the HR organization. So think about HRIS systems, think about the data, think about process, think about payroll benefits, and everything behind kind of what we get to our employees for the most part. And then when our HR leader retired, I assumed the role of leading the organization, and it's been nonstop ever since. We've been going 75 in a 35 zone.
Well, I hope there are no cops out there, but give me a little bit more context. It's really interesting on what the actual business is, because that leads to a certain, stakeholder base and different types of processes on the HR side that we'll dig into much more based on.
Of course. So we have multiple lines of business that fall into our organization. We handle vending, which is pretty freestanding vending machines, right? Those considered our customers, whether they be small customers where there's just one machine, or that can vary up to multi-site, multi-locations. We also do dining units. So everyone always kind of goes, oh, what's a dining unit? So if you think about a large employer that doesn't want to have a cafeteria, doesn't want to operate it, doesn't want to staff it, doesn't want to do the cooking, etc. And I'm being very high level on this. We actually provide those in-house dining services, and it's full scale. So prepare the food, serve the food, you name it. And then in some of those locations, we also have other businesses available, such as our micro markets, which is in-house store. Sometimes they are usually unattended. If there's a dining unit, they might be attended, they might not. But if it's a freestanding micro unit, again, that could be in a larger facility. It could be with a large customer, or it could be with a smaller customer. And then you have pretty high tech. So think about, again, grabbing a sandwich, grabbing a salad, grabbing your drink, grabbing a snack if you need a Pepto-Bismol or whatever, in case maybe it was a little bit too sugary or whatever, or that you grab, the snack you grab, it's all right there. And then we have some other services as well. But those are our primary.
Right. So as that translates to stakeholders, so there's a technology element, there's a big operational element with the actual hardware that you have, and there's a big services element. So
Absolutely.
A lot of, no dearth of complexity there. Super interesting. So to you then, in that context, what does a tech-enabled service really mean for you, and especially from an HR perspective?
Yeah, so tech-enabled service. So you think about the majority of my employees, right? Because everyone has customers, right? We have customers that we're providing these services that I just mentioned you to, and then I have my customers. My customers are the 2,700 plus employees that we support. And so when you think about multi-site, multi-location, not everyone is going to be sitting like I am in front of a laptop, or have the luxury of walking down the hall and getting some of these questions answered or have you. So it's really, how do we get information pushed out that my employees need, whether it be payroll related, whether it be benefit related, whether it be anything in between. How do we get that to them? So when you think of tech enabled, you can rely on email. Some of our employees don't have email. If they're a merchandiser, that there is responsibilities to stack the shelves in our micro market locations, they might have email, but it's probably being used for other product related or job related areas. So how do we get information to them in a way that's efficient, it's accurate, and quite frankly, it's quick? So we've utilized a couple of different tools to be able to do that, but we're always looking for ways to make it easier. Because at the end of the day, it's all about efficiency, right? None of us have time. We don't want to wait for it. We don't want a manual process. We want it now, and we want it quick. So,
Okay, let me surprisingly, I might add, push back on that because sometimes when I talk to HR leaders, I hear employees want like a face, right? When they're complaining to their friends about work, it'll be like, oh, the company is this big, you know, fuzzy ball. It's not a person. And one of the things that HR can do is actually be a person representing the company and actually help in the moment for whatever the case is. And so there's value to not efficiency, but being personable in
100%.
maybe many of these like moments that like you matter. How would you think about that in relation to, which is
Sure.
also true, I think what you said, I want it now, I want it instantly,
Sure.
and maybe don't want to talk to anyone.
Sure. So, what I've learned throughout my history is you can't be everything to everyone. There are always going to be a certain part of the population, even myself, who I like to think that I'm very forward thinking, future thinking, right? There are certain instances where I want to talk to someone. I don't want to talk to an AI enabled chatbot. I don't want to have a something pushed out to me that I'm getting with multiple layers. How many clicks do I get to the answer? Sometimes I just want to talk to a person. Let me be really clear. We're not taking away the ability for someone to speak to a live body. We're not replacing people with the technology. It's just another facet and another modality to get information out, right? So if we push information, I'll give you a perfect example. Perfect example. We have open enrollment for our benefits. They happen annually, right? We have information that we push out. We can have the physical mailers that go to your house. We have employee self-service website where people can download the brochures. We have the flip factor. We also have a tool that we use that pushes it out via text. They can download that. Anyone's more than welcome to schedule time with me. Even, believe it or not, I do enjoy sitting down and talking to people one-on-one. We also have live benefit consultants that people can talk to. So we're absolutely not trying to replace anything, but we are trying to enhance an experience to reach our employees through different channels of communication. No one's ever going to take the place of that actual live face-to-face. And we would definitely not want to do that. But there are some times where, I'm walking down the hall and I just need a quick answer. I might be at work, I might be with my kids. I might be at the store and, what was my vacation balance again? Oh, wait a minute. I can text,
Right.
I can look it up. I can look it up on the app, or I can text it to a certain location and I can have that information. If it's a Saturday night at 8 o'clock, I might not have the chance to have a live body in front of me, but it's something that I know that if it's something simple, I can access, and I have different technological or different smart technology ways to get that, to access that info. It's all about the efficiency.
Yeah, I love that breakdown of like how
Sure.
the context of when and also what
Yeah.
matters to the best way to serve it up. And you're kind of talking about as and, right? You're increasing the modalities with which someone can get the answers or get unblocked through your organization. I think we're going to talk more in depth about this stuff, but I just wanted to get your sense of that. But
Yeah, of course.
the other side, right? The experience side. But the you've kind of driven yourself and your org down this journey to, with AI in many ways, and many of us have that. But was there a personal use of AI, or like how did you like first get swept up in this revolution?
This was probably a couple of years ago. I definitely wasn't in the place I was at now. I think I was trying to write some type of speech, a leadership speech. And I don't know about you, but sometimes just getting started. Sometimes those large presentations, once I get going, I'm okay, but I needed some help. And again, not looking for I'm not looking for something to write it for me or prepare me for it, but I was like, oh, well, chat GPT. Okay. Again, this was about 2.5 years ago. Okay, great. Let's see. So I thought, all right, we'll try it. And you know what? I typed in a couple of things and it gave me at least an outline to start with. Actually, it wasn't quite bad, and I ended up using a good portion of it, but I ended up obviously changing it to sound more like me, sounding like it came from me. But it was a really good starter to at least get the ball rolling. Where I was having, quite frankly, a challenge, just a mental block on getting started, which is really interesting because usually I don't have a problem with talking. So
Well, talking is different from writing
I
and
know,
speech making,
I
but
know, I know.
um,
But
so
that's
it got you kind of it started. So that was like a use case that sounds like it.
yeah.
You realized, oh, wait a minute, there's something useful here.
Well, then I get to thinking, okay, you know what? I send out a large amount of enterprise-wide communications, right? We're pretty savvy here, but we're also pretty scrappy. Um, and we have a communications department, but we don't necessarily have I don't have an HR comms person that I rely on, right? We're 2,700 people. We don't have a need for that. Sometimes I might need again a little bit of a jump starter to help me with certain things. So absolutely, I've been a friend of the technology and various other forms to help me either get started with maybe organizing process, helping with a job description sometimes, helping with the framework on some of the programs that maybe I want to start. Again, I'm not looking for it to do the work for me, right? I'm not looking for any type of AI or smart technology to do my job, but I'm looking at it for as an enhancement to either
Mhm.
again help me with just starting down a path, helping me organize because sometimes best laid plans, when you have experience in a field, there might be some things you're forgetting, right? I don't
Right.
sit here and claim to be a subject matter expert in anything and all things HR, but anytime there's that check and balance to audit whether or not, okay, did I miss something?
Mhm.
No. Yes, no. Plus, it's a different perspective, right? It's a
It is.
different
So
perspective. So I'm absolutely a fan of using it as an enhancement.
like some of these use cases, it sounds like it's research, helping with writing, start solving the blank canvas problem,
Yep.
but then you're the editor, and
Absolutely.
then you're thinking about it to help answer questions in different forms. So it went into various workflows that you're giving examples of, to the point where this stood out to me. You told me that you know what, HR will be the first to ship AI here. Okay.
We
So I feel like
absolutely, no doubt.
that's something I don't hear often.
Okay.
So tell me about how you went from these personal use cases to increasingly starting to use it at different points in work to uh, feeling like it's a strategic imperative for the HR org within the context of the larger organization.
So great point. Look, I'm all about again efficiency and effectiveness. How can I get information to my customers, get them the right information efficiently and effectively?
Hmm.
Incredibly important. Whether it's educating, communicating, it doesn't matter. We have a lot of internal HR operations. Some of the tools we use, which are I won't say antiquated because they're not, but maybe we haven't been utilizing them in the way that they could be utilized. So it's turning that corner. In another sense, there may be an opportunity to get information, whether it be compliance information, whether it be benefit information, whether it be employee related documentation, anything like that. We've been first to look at taking anything that may have been a manual or a slower process and working it through our tools, working it through whether it be AI. We're also looking at building versus buying some things. And I think you and I talked about that at great length before, and I'm sure we'll get back into that.
Hmm.
But my point being, we've taken what would have been a manual process in a number of areas. If I can go down every single sub organizational area of HR, what I mean by that is employee relations, operations, talent acquisition, and training and development. That's how we piece all of them out. And there's not one thing we haven't been able to either look at speed of use, look at some other content delivery, look at again stop starters, or even maybe to the certain point of maybe doing some employment screenings for recruiting. So what I mean when I say let's go first and let's go fast, it's really a I don't want to be sitting on the sidelines if there's a way to free up time for my own HR employees, right? At the same time getting information to my constituents. Does that make sense? It's really
does,
speed of
but
saving time and energy that my team is spending on things that they could be focused on elsewhere, like manual processes, written documentation, saving those hours and that time where they can be having those face-to-face engagement conversations, or being out and being visible more live, but they're not wrapped up doing all of these things that they had to rely on previously from it because of a manual process. We've actually, said, hey, we're going to do it this way to give them some time back. Again, not replacing them, but enhancing their role, right?
yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I'm with you. However, I'm not sure that the industry wide that's it's kind of unique, right? Because like a lot of HR leaders in the context of any transformation, whether it's about AI or
Sure.
a digital or any kind of process transformation, are working within the context of a larger organizational culture and kind of I've heard this phrase, right? So like there's you know HR rightfully is maybe it should serve as the brakes in many ways, right? For an organization, while many other functions are always looking for ways to innovate, ways to find new value using the latest technology or new processes. Typically, HR should kind of follow that a little bit versus being ahead of it, right? So that's where I feel like it's a little bit like different. So
You know what my response to that is? Says
yeah,
who? Who are they? Who are they?
great point. I don't know. Like
Who are
it's
they? I look at it this way.
yeah.
Why do we have to follow that same path? We can be future thinking, we can be forward thinking as long as we're compliant, we're not breaking any rules, we're not doing any data breaches, we're not, crossing any of those lines that we shouldn't be. Why wouldn't we meet first to test? Why
Okay,
wouldn't
good point. Now
why
you're
wouldn't we?
probably getting to the like one of these many mental blockers, I would say probably
Sure.
for HR functions about like I have enough things to do that where these kinds of projects go down farther down the priority list, right? When
Of course.
I know these are just vague big black holes that I need to explore and answer if we really are going to move forward. So maybe I'll ask you a concrete question. So
Yeah, go ahead.
in terms of like governance and, just thinking about data protection, I mean, all these different use cases that you mentioned, these sub departments, you're dealing with employee data, right?
Correct.
So how do you get over that? I don't know the internal conversations, even right?
Yep.
That say like, no, we can get over this, and this is how we solve it.
Yep.
And what are those kinds of blockers that you kind of either internal objectives or just objections or problems to solve along the way to get to some of these solutions that you went through?
Yep. So I think if I take a step back, and obviously we want to make sure when you're looking at these things, you look at, okay, am I doing anything that's going to put data at risk, employee information at risk? You've got health, you've got payroll information. You think about what my department houses, right? You never want to put anything that could be in a position to be released or leaked or get into the hands that it doesn't need to be, right? So first off, when I say that we're doing our own technologies in a closed loop environment, we're not putting anything out there on the net, right? We own the technology, so we have the capability, we have the HRIS system, it stays in house. We've got the two factor layer security, call it safety net. It scrubs the data and makes sure that nothing else goes anywhere, right? Again, we're looking at everything that we have is in a closed loop environment. So we've put the tools and the processes in place so that, you know, I, the chance of that happening, I won't say is never, because again, that's a little bit too strong of a statement, but let's just say that we've put the levers in place that where I can see is maybe some of the naysayers that we were talking about a minute ago, that's probably a huge concern. And look, I'm not trying to glaze over that and mention that it's not, because absolutely privacy information, any company proprietary information, as well as anything related to our employees, it's of the utmost awareness where we want to keep that secure. But again, we're not operating in environments that we have that exposure out the gate, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So that's why when I think about what we're doing and where the validation in the files and where everything's going, it's not going anywhere externally that is going to put us in that space, right? There's no exposure externally for that. We have the tools in place. We have additional layers, which clearly because of proprietary reasons I can't go into, but we have the ability to put a pretty strong fail safe in place so that we're not concerned about that. But it's definitely something as we go into exploring and we go into looking at what we should be considering next, it's at the forefront of our minds. We're
Mhm.
looking at those things, and also keep in mind legislation hasn't really figured out how to work through this. So
Mm.
we're kind of on a conservative approach with our eye on that, but we're still going to keep moving forward, if that makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
compliance and the law is right here, but we're right here along with it, keeping kind of neck and neck,
Mm.
making sure we're not crossing any lines. So I'm not worried about any HIPAA laws being broken or any PHI 2.0, anything like that. We've got some pretty secure encryptions and some pretty secure areas to make sure that doesn't happen.
This has been a fantastic conversation so far. If you haven't already done so, make sure to join our community. We're building a network of the most forward-thinking HR and people operations professionals who are defining the future. I will personally be sharing news and ideas around how we can all thrive in the age of AI. You can find it at gocleary.com/Cleary-community. Now back to the show. Yeah, so then what are some, I don't know, use cases or potential applications that you came to where you went to the line and said no, for you, not now? Were there anything like that where you thought because of these considerations, whether it's data governance, uh, compliance policies, where you said, okay, well, we'll see either where the technology is or where the where laws are.
Yeah,
Have there been any use cases that you've held back on from
I
that
think
perspective?
I think so let's talk about recruiting a little bit.
Mhm.
I've heard of a couple of scenarios from some of my friends in much more advanced technological companies than what we are. They have inputted some screening. They had worked on some screening scenarios where they literally had got to the point of the live interviews, and you have the live interview and you have the candidate that can basically do all of it via either their phone or what have you. And interestingly enough, they had a couple of candidates that they thought were not bots, but were literally somehow had figured out how to conduct those interviews. I guess you'd say not like a hologram, but it wasn't the person. So
Mm.
when you watch the person in the video, there was like a millisecond where they thought the video was off. And when they looked at everything and they were kind of doing their due diligence to take a look at everything, they said, I don't think that was actually a person interviewing for that role, but a computer generated image with something behind it doing that. And I thought, okay, I'm not interviewing for positions of like MSDBAs or people that are deep into coding, at least right now, right? We're not in that space. So I don't know if we would ever get to the point of where I would be worried necessarily about an interview if we got to a phone, using the phone technology to maybe do that first pass of interviews, or maybe that second pass, who knows.
Mhm.
But it did kind of make me go, I'm not quite comfortable there. I want to see what happens in those cases. I know there have also been a couple of court cases out there involving that. So for me, while I'm pretty future focused, fail fast, move forward, keep it going, I'm not to a point where I think that we should be utilizing it necessarily to take place of the face-to-face interviews, whether that be live or, but taking the place completely is a little out of my comfort zone based on what I just told you. I know I got a little verbose there, but yeah, if I'm going to interview someone, I want to make sure that what I'm watching, whether it be pre-recorded or what have you, is live and it's the right person and it is actually a human doing it. That's a little concerning. That to me is a
Yeah,
little
so
concerning.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a couple of trends that are coming in parallel, right? So one
Yeah,
is the massive efficiency gain that many companies are seeing potentially for the whole recruiting process. Let's just have it 100% through AI, all the way to automatic offer generation for all the stages without any human intervention. And there's ways to come back from that, from just doing one layer or second layer and beyond. And the second order effect of that, or the same technology, is enabling candidates to use AI avatars to, fight that, you could call it, or just spam it, or just get efficiencies for their time, right? As another way to put it charitably. But
yeah,
that is definitely a trend that's like happening. But I think what I'm hearing is, so you're stepping very lightly on the recruiting side, but a lot of your innovation has been post offer, right? So like from like
correct.
onboarding and beyond for the rest of the employee experience. And I think it sounds like you're doing checks, right? It's not necessarily like full automation. It depends on
Correct.
the particular workflow. So I wanted to ask another question based on your previous response, actually, which is the other blocker is like how. So I have this mindset. I want to innovate. I want to do these things. Okay, I've figured out. Okay, there's some basic things we need to have with an AI policy and make sure that our data isn't taken out for training, or we already use ChatGPT or Microsoft. We're going to try something, so it feels like safe. But then, who are you working with internally to enable these things for your team? And maybe we can also talk a little bit about that build buy kind of conversation, because I think it's different for different folks.
Yep. So I think a lot of that, just to your point, right? And to be clear, we are using a little bit, and we will be using, to some extent, smart technology, or maybe AI enabled technology to help with some of the onboarding or the pre onboarding process or some steps. The one thing that we've found with our employees through, the surveys and just the feedback loops that we've done is they don't want to not talk to a human, right? So there's that personal touch. They want to have some personal touch along that continuum, because I mean, can you imagine not having you put in your job application, you go through interviews, whether it be on site, whatever, however involved it is, and then you have 2 to 3 weeks that go by because you're waiting on the candidate to go through whatever screening and provide information, give their notice. If that's the case, you could be looking at 3 to 4 weeks. Can you imagine not talking to a single human being until your first day? To me, that seems, I'm in the people business. So to me, again, it goes back
Doesn't
to
breed
that.
confidence.
You have to have that balance. So I think for us, it's not so much saying a no-go on certain other areas of HR. It's a, how do we balance the human factor, which is important to people, right? Because at the end of the day, we are hiring people. And how do we create efficiencies not only for us but for them, and leverage that to, so that we don't have people in that first part of that example, right, who don't see someone for 3 to 4 weeks. But then how do we also feel that, so that they're not overwhelmed by everybody from the company calling? Because in a company culture where you have a lot of hands-on, you have a lot of human interaction, you have a lot of fill in the blank, again, it's that balance. So I do feel it's important to say that. Now, going back to your question, I think for us it depends. Again, my scope of the world is HR, but I do partner collaboratively with other areas, right? We have a safety organization that focuses on a lot of what we do out in the field, right? We have a lot of people that drive trucks. We have a lot of people that are in and out of customers. We have training that's required, not only by federal law, compliance, call it that, but there are other things in between. So we have utilized smart technology to provide the training, and also to actually create some of the training as well, right? So again, so we don't have to pull everybody in off of the trucks. If they're not doing their job to our customers, our customers are not getting what they need, and we're not making money. So again, but we also want to be safe and compliant. So how do we do that? Well, we push it out, right? We push it out through smart technology. And that comes from my training department, where again, we can break it into bite-sized modules. We partner with our vendor who handles that. We also partner internally, not only with our safety and risk department, to make sure what we're putting out, what we're pushing out is the content that we need to, in order to remain compliant and safe, but also what is that balance of timing, right? Do you push out an hour training? I don't think so. I don't think anyone in our area or line of work is going to have that kind of time. So we're pushing those out into like 20, 15, 20-minute modules, and that seems to be working. So a lot of partnership between my department, safety, our operations teams, because again, that's where this falls under. And then
Right.
I would say local management at our branches, our regional management as well. And then quite frankly, IT, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of partnership there, whether it be talking about the modalities that we're going to use, uh, whether we have any concerns about access, whether we have any concerns about anything else. And I think we've done a nice job. Always room for improvement. I'm a big believer in that, right? So what we pushed out maybe 6 months ago, we should be continuously looking at, and on also our line of work, compliance laws change, so we need to
Right.
make sure that we're completely on top of that and we're fresh as well. So it's not just HR compliance, but it's also compliance from the different departments and the different areas that we work. Safety is a very near and dear one to my heart, because again, a large part of our population is out on the road, and we always want to make sure that people return the same way they left in the morning. So, however, we can make their lives safer, or again more efficient all around, so much the better. So yeah, we'll continue to push the envelope even in those types of areas. So a lot of it is partnering. I hope I answered your question, Thomas.
Yeah,
I know
there's
I kind of rewound a little bit there, but I felt it was important to touch base back on that, just because it
yeah. So another aspect that HR leaders have to contend with if you want to get these kind of projects off the ground around using AI for more efficiency is their own team, right? So you want the L&D team or the onboarding team, all your HR generalists to be on board with you to execute on these projects, and their day to day is going to be changing. So how do you get them to come along with you on this journey?
Sure. So I think it all starts with where you see the business going, right? And you take the time, which we did, in fact, very recently, to show where the business strategy is going. And
Mm,
we are moving in a very technologically advanced area, even for what we do, right? And so at the end of the day, everyone really wants to understand how they, as an individual, whether they be an individual contributor or a manager, right? Or if they're leading a team, they want to know how does their group impact that larger picture, or how does their individual self impact that larger picture, which quite frankly leads to the business. And I've got a great team. I've got a great team individually, and I've got a great team collectively speaking. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the strategy in each one of those respective areas. And I've spent a lot of time working with each of those leaders in training and development, in employee relations, in recruiting, right? And also in HR operations. And sometimes it's look, sometimes it's a fear of the unknown. Sometimes it's not understanding exactly how this technology can enable me to be a more agile leader. I think when you look at everything across the landscape, one thing that stuck out to me was, what can we do to make their jobs easier? And then when they reflect on that, how can they walk away saying, wow, that saved me hours of time, that pushed us ahead, again, pick whichever direction you want to go in. Maybe I'm either good at selling, or maybe I just got lucked out and have a team that thrives in that type of environment. I think we're still playing a little bit of catch up from not being as advanced in certain areas as we could be. So I'm going to leap over some of those other steps to get us to where we need to be. And
mm.
from a training and development perspective, they're all in. From employee relations, all in. HR ops, all in. And for talent acquisition, or as we call it, that recruiting, all in. I don't.
Although for that last one, you mentioned how that said you're cautious from because even if you're all in, you're cautious about the candidate journey and the employee experience. So
Yeah,
you're being careful.
yeah.
All in doesn't mean like let's use every tool
No,
and the latest and
no, no.
greatest and just boom go.
Yeah, so let me
Yeah,
be
it's a
very
mindset,
clear.
right?
When I say I'm all in, I literally mean, look, we're taking the time to do the qualitative, the quantitative research. We're looking at predictive modeling. We're doing small subset case studies to look at where we're at, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. We're going to fail fast, we're going to fail forward, and then we're going to move ahead. We're in no way going to put any of our people, our processes, our technology, or any of the data at risk. So we're being very deliberate and very thoughtful but we are moving forward. We're not doing the analysis
Right.
paralysis. We're not going to get stuck by at least not trying. We are going to try. Sometimes by trying we find out maybe it wasn't such a great idea, and maybe on other times it opens doors we never even thought of. And then I think you've got those other situations. Perfect example. You and I spent time talking about that closed loop for my employee relations folks, right?
Mm.
That was a stumble. We absolutely did not walk out of the door or come out of the gate saying, "Yeah, we own everything. Let's just close loop it." It started as a challenge, and the challenge was I have my employee relations team doing investigations, which is clearly what they do, but I also want them to not be known as the document writers, right? Even if it's typing it, not manually drafting these disciplinary actions or these investigations. So what tools and resources could we be looking at to enhance that? And we looked at a tool. It was an extremely expensive tool, but this tool was meant to take the place of two people. And to be clear, I'm not looking at replacing members on my team. I'm not looking to do away with people. I'm looking to how do I enhance my team's job or existence into being more efficient, more effective? What are the tools and resources we can give them to be better people leaders? Because at the end of the day, it is people first. So we found out that it was going to be almost $200,000 to basically have a tool that used our policy, our write up forms, our HRIS system, which again, you think about that, exposing it to a third party vendor is putting it out there. Not something I'm willing to do. So I was driving in the one day and it just kind of hit me. I don't know why, but I thought, wait a minute. I've got a team of developers who are chomping at the bit to do some really cool stuff like this. If we own the technology, we own the HRIS system, we own everything else I mentioned, the policies, the procedures. Why would I pay $200,000 for someone else to come in, potentially store that data, whether it's cloud-based or we're using a SaaS-based vendor, it doesn't matter. It's putting things out there. So why wouldn't we keep it internal, make the tweaks, perfect the technology, and run a closed loop tool on our own? And that's what we're doing. No, we haven't perfected it. Let me be very clear, but that's the plan. And it wasn't me being cheap. I'm saving 200,000 or looking to get rid of people.
I think that's it, right? So it
It's
sounds like it was like a
biding the
decision
time.
a decision made really in a future looking looking into the future for the career development of your employee relations team. So part of the question is how can the internal team reskill, upskill
Yep.
to be leveraging uh, what they already have in their subject matter expertise
Yep.
and in their process and workflow expertise, and then to pair that with maybe an internal IT resource, which it's great that you have folks who are chomping at the bit and have the time to work on your project. Your mileage may vary for those out there,
Correct.
but if you pair those together, now you've solved several problems at once, right? So there's
Absolutely.
a career ladder thing. You bring people along, as well as there's pros and cons, but you're keeping it uh, internally, right? You're not potentially bringing in another
Right.
vendor into the fray.
No, there's a control factor, and again, it's not just a budget factor. But I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that I would have spent 200,000. They probably would have looked at me like, "Are you crazy?" But again, it's how do we enhance? How do we create? It's either build or buy, right?
Mhm.
And in this case, it makes more sense for us to build.
So one last question. I want to go a
Yeah,
little bit deeper on something you mentioned, which I think can be another thing that for a lot of HR leaders, it's like another nagging question that like gets gets you to stop, right? Which is, well, if we go down this path with investing in AI instead of what we do internally today with the process, it is going to be a lot of effort and it might fail,
sure.
right? And you talked about failing fast and doing smaller projects, figuring out if it would work. Could you go through that mindset a little bit more? And if there's an example you have of either like a checkpoint that said gave you the confidence to move forward, or a checkpoint that said, "Yep, that's okay, that's not for us at this time, and we'll come back to it."
Yep. So fail fast, fail forward, right? We're gonna take some of these ideas. One of them, which I will keep at a high level, but we were utilizing AI tools to assist with some of the job descriptions. It goes back to when we talked about um, being able to kind of have that be that conversation starter, right?
Right.
And the nice thing is you can drop an existing job description into Copilot, or again, keep that internal. I'm not going external. Keep it internal and say, hey, I it's set up as maybe they want to use Julie's tone. Okay. They want to do a little softer. They don't want to be as cut and dry as maybe John's tone may be. So you can overlay it. I don't get to that level necessarily unless I'm writing something from me. But when I think about just areas that we've looked at and failing fast, failing forward, that was one of those areas, right? Okay, so I don't want my team to necessarily sit there and write job descriptions all day either, but clearly we had some that may need to be modified. So let's get them all at least presented in a way that are current. Let's modify them a little bit. We're not doing complete rewrites. So is there a smart tool technology or AI that can help assist with that? So again, we've started with a small batch of them. It was something that was working. Obviously, we came back and we still had people, right, looking at them and reviewing them, our subject matter experts, making sure that they were correct, that we weren't doing anything, that they weren't over here when they should have been over here, right? They were far off scope because the tool took them out of a realm that they didn't need to be from a just a functional perspective. But imagine if you're dropping an existing and you're saying, okay, I need to add XYZ and ABC to this section, and I want to change this or that. What could have taken maybe 2 hours, right? Or, I started as a recruiter and I'm kind of dialing for dollars for candidates or emailing or scheduling or whatever it is I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm also trying to update job descriptions. Saved hours, saves time, right? I'm not having to spend hour upon hour. Instead of maybe an hour every couple days, you drop it in the tool, you update it based on the notes that you have from a conversation you had from a manager, or you're creating a senior version of whatever, right? Instead of a pricing analyst, you have a senior pricing analyst. Instead of an HR generalist, you have a senior. That tool can do that. That just saved me hours. So then when you send it to the leader or whomever needs to review it, because they're the subject matter expert, you're sending them a batch that has 4 or 5 descriptions, as opposed to piecing it out or dropping it in a shared folder where you literally have little material. So again, those are some fast fails that were actually a win. I know that's probably not the best example to give you.
Oh,
Um,
that sounds, so I'm really thinking about, like, how do you go from the idea that you can do this to doing
yeah,
it for one job description?
yeah,
How do you know that it worked? But it sounds like you're to do it for one job description, figuring out the entire process all the way to the manager reviewing it, and then you're slowly it's working. So then
it's
then
working,
you
right?
then you iterate it on forward. Or for example, there was just like terrible feedback from the manager, like, this looks like AI slop. Can you stop doing this and actually do your
We
job?
haven't got that.
That should
The
make you take a step back, right?
The funny thing is we haven't gotten that, and so when you drop the document in, and we have utilized Copilot. I mean, I'll freely say we've used Copilot to help with that. We've also I have used Copilot to help us with some of the questions. We've used some other software as well, but for this example, we have utilized Copilot. It's interesting because you say, okay, take the document I just sent you, create a version that's maybe 2 to 4 years more experience, or take this DBA, or take this tester example, take this whatever, and give me the experience. Create a job description that has the experience of someone that has 8 to 10 years and has a PhD in fill in the blank, and it's amazing what it can turn around. Now it might not be, it might be 95% there, and that 5% or whatever that area is going to require obviously specialization that has to do with your company if you're getting to that level, or maybe there are some other minor tweaks because it's a hybrid or combination of other roles, but it saved you time. Again, I'm not looking to replace someone, but I'm looking to increase the efficiency, upskill my team, as well as just give them the ability to focus on some other things, which may be the human side, you know?
Absolutely. I think that's probably uh, the part that's hardest to see. It's easy to see the things that will go away if you do this right. But what's hard to see, but I believe is there, is just an incredible, much more depth of demand from organizations for like human resource services and people team services that I think you just said a great example of one. If you're providing a job description, even as it's so simple as that, here's 5 flavors of it that a manager can compare and look at the nuances, which would have taken hours and was just not something you were delivering before. So there's so much more, even though you're still, that recruiter job title, you can actually provide a better service if you can use these tools appropriately. And thank you so much for going through all of these nuanced, almost like mental objections that I
Sure.
think people have, even for folks who are within a company with an AI strategy or have the personal mindset that they need to be leaning in. There's all these blockers, right? Whether it's data, privacy, governance, or who do I collaborate with, or do I build, or do I buy? What use case do I start with? How do I bring my team along? How do I make sure that we can fail fast and this not be just this giant money bucket, right? That where you never get anything back. So
Yep.
we went through so many of these things beautifully. So thank you so much for this conversation,
You're
Julie.
welcome. Thank you.
It has been really enlightening, and I love the ethos and drive that you have with respect to this technology and how you're have a very practical mindset. Right, you're all in, but that doesn't mean that you're saying yes to everything. You're being very strategic about where and how you're saying yes to different things and
Fail
making
fast,
sure.
fail forward.
There you go. Well, so thank you again for the conversation, Julie, and
You're
for
welcome.
everyone out there who's following along and who is future proofing their own organizations, their own HR functions. I hope you found some value in this conversation, as I did. And good luck out there. See you on the next one. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Future Proof HR. If you like the discussion, make sure you leave us a 5-star review on the platform you're listening to or watching us on. Or share this with a friend or colleague who may find value in the message. See you next time as we keep our pulse on how we can all thrive in the age of AI. Hey, it's Thomas again. One quick question before you go. Are you and your HR team tired of answering the same employee questions again and again in Slack? If yes, our Cleary AI-powered Slack bot is here to help. It takes routine employee requests and answers it automatically while freeing up time for you to take on more important tasks. At the same time, it automatically builds up an HR knowledge base as you go. It's quick to set up, works right in Slack, and you can try it for free. Just head on over to gocleary.com/HR-chatbot to install it. It's again, gocleary.com/HR-chatbot. Thanks again.